Imagine you're in a meeting, surrounded by colleagues. Suddenly, your boss turns to you and says, "So what do you think?" Your mind goes blank. Your heart races. You can almost hear the silence stretching across the room. You know you have brilliant ideas, but they're trapped behind the wall of panic that suddenly builds in your mind. Sound familiar? This is the moment Think Faster, Talk Smarter was written for. In this powerful and practical guide, communication expert Matt Abrahams teaches us how to stay calm, think clearly, and speak confidently when we're put on the spot. Whether it's a job interview, a presentation, or an unexpected question in a conversation, life constantly throws us into situations where we have to think and speak in real time. And yet, most of us were never taught how. Instead, we learn to fear those moments, to freeze, overthink, or retreat. Matt Abrahams, a lecturer at Stanford Graduate School of Business, has spent decades studying one question: why do smart, capable people stumble when they have to speak spontaneously, and how can we fix it? Through his research and coaching, he discovered a liberating truth. The ability to think faster and talk smarter isn't about talent or quick wit. It's about training your mind to stay calm, focused, and structured under pressure. When most of us face spontaneous speaking situations, our nervous system reacts as if we're in danger. Our ancient biology designed to fight or flee floods our body with adrenaline. Our heart beats faster, our hands shake, and our thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. But Abrahams reminds us these reactions are not signs of weakness. They're signs that your body is trying to protect you. And once you learn to reframe that energy, channel it, and structure your thoughts clearly, you can transform anxiety into clarity and fear into focus. He calls this the skill of spontaneous speaking, the art of communicating confidently in the unscripted moments of life. Think about it. The most important opportunities in your life are interviews, meetings, first impressions, unexpected questions that rarely come with preparation time. They come in moments. And in those moments, what matters most isn't perfection, it's presence. This book is divided into 3 parts, each a step on the journey from panic to poise. Part 1 helps you master your inner game, reframing anxiety, organizing your thoughts quickly, and using storytelling to make spontaneous moments memorable. Part 2 teaches the outer game, how to listen actively, stay present, and deliver concise, meaningful messages even when you're unprepared. Part 3 brings it all together, showing how connection, practice, and authenticity transform you from a nervous speaker into a confident communicator. Matt Abrahams shares not just communication techniques, but mindsets, ways to retrain the brain itself. He shows that confidence doesn't come from memorizing scripts, but from learning to trust yourself in the moment. You'll learn how to stay calm when all eyes are on you. Turn nervous energy into enthusiasm. Structure your ideas on the fly so your words flow naturally. And most importantly, connect with your audience, with your message, and with your authentic self. As you listen to this audiobook summary, remember, this isn't about learning tricks to sound perfect. It's about learning tools to sound real, and real always beats perfect. Every moment of connection, every act of courage, begins the same way, with uncertainty. But as you'll soon discover, uncertainty doesn't have to be your enemy. It can be your greatest opportunity. So take a breath. Relax your shoulders. And imagine a new possibility, a version of you who welcomes spontaneous moments with calm, clarity, and confidence. This journey is about transforming fear into flow, pressure into presence, and hesitation into mastery. As Matt Abrahams writes, the key to speaking successfully when you're put on the spot isn't thinking faster, it's thinking clearer. In this cinematic summary, we'll explore how to do exactly that, how to find your voice, organize your thoughts, and speak with authenticity no matter what life throws your way. Welcome to Think Faster, Talk Smarter, where we learn not just to speak better, but to be better in the moments that matter most. Let's begin with Chapter 1, Reframe, shifting your mindset from fear to confidence. It begins the same way for all of us. You're asked to speak, maybe in a meeting, maybe in a classroom, or maybe on stage, and suddenly, your chest tightens. Your palms sweat. Your mind begins to spin faster than your words can follow. You know what you want to say, yet somehow, the words vanish. This is the moment that separates the confident communicator from the anxious one. But as Matt Abrahams reminds us, the difference isn't talent. It's the mindset. Most people believe that nervousness is a sign of weakness, that confident speakers simply don't get nervous. But here's the truth: everyone feels nervous. Even professional speakers, actors, and CEOs experience the same surge of adrenaline. The key, Abraham says, is not to eliminate anxiety, but to reframe it, to change how you interpret that surge of energy inside you. When your heart races, it's not your body betraying you. It's your body preparing you. That rush of adrenaline is your system saying, "Wake up. You're about to do something important." The physiological response we call fear is, in fact, the same energy that fuels excitement. The only difference between fear and excitement is interpretation. If you label it as fear, your mind constricts, your breathing shortens, and your voice trembles. But if you call it excitement, if you reframe it as readiness, the same energy becomes power. Matt Abrahams calls this shift the first and most crucial step toward spontaneous speaking success, turning fear into focus. He writes that our anxiety often comes from a single hidden belief, that speaking is about us. We think we're being judged, evaluated, measured. We worry about sounding smart, being right, or not making a mistake. But when we shift the focus outward, when we remind ourselves that communication is about connection, not perfection, the pressure begins to dissolve. Abrahams often tells his students, "You're not performing. You're contributing." That one sentence changes everything. Speaking spontaneously isn't about impressing people. It's about sharing something useful in the moment, offering value, even in small ways. Once you reframe speaking as helping others understand, rather than proving your worth, fear loses its grip. Let's imagine a situation. You're in a meeting, and your manager suddenly says, "Could you give us your quick thoughts on this proposal?" The spotlight hits you, and your instinct is panic. You feel your mind go blank, your confidence evaporates. But then you remember, this isn't a test. This is a contribution. You're not expected to be perfect, just present. You take a breath, slow your thoughts, and speak from what you know. Suddenly, the words begin to flow. That's the magic of reframing, shifting from performing to participating. Matt Abrahams also points out that our brains can't distinguish between physical danger and psychological pressure. That's why spontaneous speaking can trigger the same fight or flight response as standing at the edge of a cliff. But we can retrain that response. Instead of resisting the sensations, the quickened heart, the shaky hands, we can accept them as signs that our body is priming for action. He encourages a simple mental mantra before speaking: "I'm not nervous, I'm excited." It sounds small, but it's scientifically powerful. Research shows that this subtle shift in labeling transforms stress hormones into performance enhancers, improving focus and clarity. You're not suppressing fear, you're transforming it. Reframing also means letting go of the myth of perfection. Most of our anxiety comes from the unrealistic expectation that we must sound flawless, that every word must land perfectly, every sentence must impress. But the truth, Abraham says, is that authenticity beats perfection every time. Audiences connect with sincerity, not with scripted brilliance. A small stumble, a pause, even a laugh are not mistakes. They're signals of humanity. When you reframe imperfection as connection, you no longer fear it. You embrace it. Matt Abrahams also suggests physical reframing, grounding techniques that shift your body's energy. Simple actions like taking a slow breath, feeling your feet on the ground, or lightly pressing your fingertips together can pull your focus away from panic and back into presence. The more you ground your body, the calmer your mind becomes. And the calmer your mind, the clearer your words. One of Abraham's most powerful lessons is this: your mindset is your message. If you approach communication from fear, your audience will feel that fear. But if you approach it from curiosity, confidence, or care, they'll feel that instead. Your energy, more than your words, sets the tone for connection. The shift from fear to confidence doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual rewiring of how you perceive pressure. Every spontaneous speaking moment is an opportunity to test this new mindset. Each time you pause, breathe, and choose excitement over anxiety, you train your mind to trust itself. Matt Abrahams often tells his students that confidence is not the absence of nerves, it's the mastery of them. You can still feel the butterflies if you just teach them how to fly in formation. In the end, reframing is about perspective. It's realizing that communication is not a battle to be won, but a bridge to be built. It's not about defending yourself from judgment, but offering yourself in service. When you speak from that place from clarity, authenticity, and purpose, confidence flows naturally. So the next time you're put on the spot, don't fight your nerves. Welcome them. Feel your heart beating fast. That's your body preparing for connection. Feel the rush. That's your energy rising to meet the moment. Shift your focus from yourself to your message, from performance to presence, from fear to confidence. Because as Matt Abrahams reminds us, the goal isn't to speak without fear, it's to speak despite it. Chapter 2, Structure, Organizing Your Thoughts Quickly. You've reframed your fear. You've taken that surge of nervous energy and turned it into excitement. But now another challenge appears. What should I say? The moment someone looks at you and expects an answer, your mind fills with fragments of thoughts and too many ideas, none of them clear. You want to sound composed and intelligent, but your sentences twist, repeat, and vanish halfway through. This is the second great hurdle of spontaneous speaking, not knowing how to structure your ideas quickly. Matt Abrahams calls this the difference between thinking fast and thinking clearly. You can have brilliant insights, but if they come out scattered, your message loses power. The secret, he says, isn't speaking faster or louder. It's organizing your thoughts in real time using simple, reliable structures. These structures are your mental scaffolding frameworks that hold your ideas upright even under pressure. Abrahams explains that when we face impromptu moments, whether it's answering a question in a meeting or responding to an unexpected challenge, our brain enters cognitive overload. We're trying to think, speak, and manage anxiety all at once. A clear structure frees up mental space. It gives our thoughts a home. Once you know where your message begins, where it travels, and where it lands, everything else flows naturally. He shares one of his favorite tools, the what? So what? Now what? Framework. It's simple, elegant, and works in nearly every situation. What? Describe the situation, fact, or idea. So what? Explain why it matters. Now what? State what action, insight, or next step follows. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone asks, "What do you think about this new proposal?" You pause, take a breath, and silently apply the structure. What? This proposal introduces a more efficient process for our customer feedback system. So what? That's important because it helps us identify client concerns faster and improve satisfaction. Now what? I suggest we pilot it with one department to gather data before scaling it company-wide. Clear. Logical. Confidence. You didn't rush. You didn't ramble. You simply guided your listeners through a journey of understanding. Abrahams explains that structure is more than a communication tool, it's a confidence anchor. When you know how to organize your ideas, you no longer fear being put on the spot. You know you can take any topic and make it coherent. It's like learning to build a bridge. Once you know the design, you can construct it anywhere, even when the materials of your words change. He offers several frameworks that serve different situations. There's the problem, solution, benefit model, perfect for persuasive moments. There's past, present, future, great for storytelling and reflection. And there's the point, reason, example, point method, a quick way to build clarity and impact. But the framework doesn't matter as much as the habit. The real skill is developing the instinct to think in structure, not chaos. Matt Abrahams says that structure gives the audience something precious. When people listen, they crave orientation. They want to know where you're going. Without structure, even brilliant thoughts feel confusing. With structure, even simple points sound wise. He tells his students that great speakers are not those who know everything, but those who can make people follow their thinking step by step. The brain loves order. When your message is clear, your audience relaxes, and so do you. Let's imagine someone named Ria, a young professional terrified of being called on during meetings. Every time her name came up, her thoughts scattered. Then she discovered Abraham's frameworks. The next time her boss asked for her opinion, she paused and thought, what? So what? Now what? Within seconds, her words fell into place. Afterward, her boss smiled and said, "You're really clear when you speak." That single moment shifted her identity, from anxious thinker to confident communicator. This is the power of structure. It doesn't just help you sound smarter, it helps you feel grounded. Abrahams explains that structure also helps in moments of pressure because it slows you down. It gives you permission to pause to think for a breath before responding. Pausing is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. Audiences interpret it as thoughtfulness. Silence, used well, commands more respect than rushed speech ever could. He teaches his students to practice mental templates before high-stakes moments. For example, before a meeting, think, if I'm asked about progress, I'll use past, present, future. If I need to recommend something, I'll use problem, solution, benefit. This kind of preparation trains the brain to stay structured even under stress. Abrahams reminds us that structure is not about rigidity, it's about clarity. You can adapt it to any tone, casual conversation, interviews, presentations, even everyday dialogue. Once you internalize it, structure becomes invisible, a quiet rhythm beneath your words. The listener doesn't notice it, but they feel it. They trust it. He writes, "When you provide structure, you provide safety for your audience and for yourself." In spontaneous speaking, structure is your compass. It keeps you from wandering. It reminds you that even when your mind feels blank, there is always a direction forward. So the next time you're caught off guard when someone asks for your opinion, when silence demands a response, remember, you don't have to speak fast. You just have to speak clearly. Take a breath. Choose a structure. Guide your thoughts one step at a time. Because the secret to sounding spontaneous isn't thinking faster, it's thinking in order. And once you can do that, your mind stops feeling like a storm, and starts feeling like a calm, flowing river carrying your ideas exactly where they need to go. That's the art of structure, organizing your thoughts quickly, clearly, and confidently. Next, we'll explore how to bring those thoughts to life through one of the oldest and most powerful tools in human history: storytelling. Chapter 3, Story. Engaging your audience instantly. Human beings are wired for stories. Long before we wrote words on paper, we shared wisdom around fires, telling tales of triumph, survival, love, and loss. Thousands of years later, even in our modern boardrooms and classrooms, that instinct hasn't changed. Data may inform us, but stories move us. They make us listen, remember, and feel. Matt Abrahams reminds us that in spontaneous speaking, when we have no slides, no script, and no time to prepare, storytelling is your most powerful tool. Because when your words form a story, your audience's mind relaxes. They stop judging and start imagining. The moment a story begins, the human brain releases dopamine, the chemical of attention and emotion. We lean in. We want to know what happens next. Abraham says that stories are not just about entertainment, they are containers for meaning. They give structure to chaos, and they connect your audience to your message emotionally. You may forget facts, but you'll remember the story that carried them. He often begins with this simple principle: if you can describe an experience, you can tell a story. You don't need to be a novelist. You just need to speak from real moments of challenge, realization, or change. The most powerful stories are small and true. He gives an example from his own life. During a live class, a student once asked him a complex question about managing anxiety while presenting. Without preparation, he smiled and said, "Let me tell you about the first time I taught a class." He described his trembling hands, the silence of the room, the one student who smiled and gave him courage. In less than 2 minutes, he turned an abstract concept into a human connection. That's the power of story. It transforms advice into empathy. When we speak spontaneously, it's easy to drown in logic, to list points, reasons, and explanations. But the human mind doesn't connect to bullet points. It connects to emotion. Stories bypass analysis and go straight to the heart. And here's the magic: even short, simple stories can do this. Abrahams teaches that a story doesn't have to be long to be powerful. He suggests a 3-part storytelling model that mirrors human experience. Set up, establish the situation. Challenge, Show what went wrong or what changed. Resolution. Reveal what you learned or what came next. That's it. A clear arc that anyone can follow, whether you're answering a question, giving feedback, or sharing an insight. Imagine you're in an interview, and the recruiter asks, "Tell me about a time you handled a challenge." You pause, smile, and say, "Sure. When I was leading a small project team last year, we faced a major delay because of a vendor issue. At first, it was frustrating we were missing deadlines, and morale was dropping. But I decided to turn it into a learning moment. We regrouped, restructured the process, and actually finished stronger than before. That experience taught me that problems often carry hidden opportunities if you're willing to adapt." That's it for 30 seconds. One story, one lesson. The listener remembers it because they can see it. They can feel it. Abraham says that stories allow listeners to experience rather than observe. They shift attention from you to us. Suddenly, communication becomes collaboration, a shared space of imagination. And when you speak from a story, even under pressure, your words find rhythm naturally. You stop sounding rehearsed and start sounding real. Abrahams explains that stories are also lifesavers when your mind goes blank. Instead of scrambling for abstract explanations, you can return to a lived experience. You don't have to invent, you just have to remember. And because it's your story, your delivery will automatically carry emotion and confidence. He often tells his students to build a story bank, a mental library of short personal experiences tied to key themes: resilience, teamwork, learning, creativity. These become your spontaneous speaking toolkit. When someone asks a tough question, you can draw from your story bank and respond authentically, without sounding scripted. But storytelling isn't just about telling your story. Abrahams reminds us that it's also about inviting their story. The best communicators don't dominate the narrative, they open it. They share something personal enough to connect, yet universal enough to inspire. They create a bridge of understanding, not a pedestal of performance. He writes, "Storytelling is not performance, it's participation. It's about building shared meaning in real time." That's what makes storytelling so powerful in spontaneous speaking. When you share a story, you're not giving a speech, you're creating a shared experience. Let's picture an example. You're in a team meeting. Someone says, "We can't meet this goal, it's too ambitious." You could argue logically, or you could tell a story. You take a breath and say, "You know, this reminds me of when we faced an impossible deadline last quarter. Everyone thought it couldn't be done, but then we changed our approach and pulled it off. Maybe we can do the same here." In seconds, the energy in the room changes. People sit up. They remember that story. Why? Because logic informs the mind, but story ignites the spirit. Matt Abrahams says that the best stories aren't about success, they're about transformation. They show vulnerability, growth, and learning. When you share where you struggled, you give others permission to be human too. And that's what builds trust, the foundation of all communication. In spontaneous speaking, you rarely get time to plan. But you can always reach for a story, one that connects, teaches, or uplifts. A story doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. So the next time you're put on the spot, don't try to impress. Instead, invite. Tell a small story that carries truth. Speak from experience, not ego. Because when you tell a story, you're not just sharing words, you're sharing yourself. And that is how you engage your audience instantly through authenticity, empathy, and the oldest form of human connection, the story. In the next chapter, we'll explore the hidden skill that makes great storytelling and all communication truly powerful: listening. Chapter 4, Listening, the secret to thinking and responding faster. We often think that great communicators are defined by how well they speak, how eloquently they express themselves, how smoothly their words flow. But Matt Abrahams reminds us that true mastery of communication doesn't begin with speaking, it begins with listening. In fact, the ability to think faster and respond smarter in any situation depends less on your words, and more on your ears. Think about it. When you're anxious about what to say next, your focus shifts inward. You stop hearing the person in front of you. You stop noticing tone, expression, and emotion. You get trapped in the noise of your own thoughts, and that inner noise drowns out connection. But when you listen, really listen, something remarkable happens. Your mind slows down, your attention sharpens, and your responses become more natural, more authentic, more human. Matt Abrahams calls listening the anchor of spontaneous speaking. It's the foundation that allows you to respond meaningfully instead of reacting mechanically. And yet listening, true, active listening, is rare. Most of us don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. While others speak, we're busy composing our answers in our heads. The result? Our responses feel rehearsed, defensive, or disconnected. Abrahams explains that spontaneous communication isn't about crafting the perfect answer. It's about crafting the right one, the one that fits the moment, the emotion, the audience. And to do that, you must first understand what's really being said. Words are just the surface. Beneath them are emotions, intentions, and unspoken meanings that only attentive listening can reveal. He reminds us that when you focus fully on listening, you free yourself from fear. Anxiety thrives on self-focus. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I sound foolish? But when you turn your attention outward, toward the other person, those thoughts lose power. You stop worrying about performing and start participating. Listening pulls you out of your head and into the moment. Imagine being in a conversation where you're completely present. No inner monologue, no overthinking. You're not planning your next line, you're absorbing theirs. You notice their eyes, their tone, the pauses between their words. In that state, your mind isn't frozen or frantic. It's alert, open, alive. Responses emerge naturally because they're rooted in understanding, not anxiety. Matt Abrahams shares that active listening has 3 layers: hearing, interpreting, and responding. The first is simple awareness, being quiet enough, externally and internally, to truly hear what's being said. The second is empathy, understanding not just the words, but the feelings behind them. And the third is alignment, responding in a way that acknowledges and advances the conversation. He gives a simple technique called listen, pause, paraphrase. When someone speaks, listen fully. Then pause for a breath. Give yourself a moment to process. Finally, paraphrase what you understood before replying. This technique not only clarifies your understanding, but also signals to the other person that you value their words. It builds trust and gives your brain the space it needs to form thoughtful responses. Let's imagine a real moment. You're in a tense meeting, and a colleague says something unexpected. I don't think this project is working at all. Your instinct might be to defend, to respond immediately, emotionally. But instead, you listen. You pause. You say, "It sounds like you're worried about our progress. Can you tell me what's making you feel that way?" In that moment, everything changes. You've diffused tension. You've opened dialogue. And you've given yourself the clarity to respond with intelligence rather than impulse. Abrahams points out that listening also improves memory and connection. When you're fully present, your brain records more detail, not just the facts, but the emotions and subtext that help you understand the situation deeply. The more accurately you perceive, the more precisely you can respond. That's how you begin to think faster, not by rushing your thoughts, but by quieting them enough to notice what truly matters. He often tells his students, slow down to go fast. In other words, take the time to listen deeply, and your responses will flow more effortlessly. It's paradoxical. By creating silence, you speed up understanding. By speaking less, you say more. Abrahams also introduces the idea of listening with curiosity. Instead of assuming, judging, or planning your reply, approach each moment as an opportunity to learn something new. When you listen with curiosity, you stay adaptable. You become like a jazz musician, responding fluidly to what others play, co-creating something beautiful in real time. Listening is also an act of respect. When you truly listen, you make the other person feel seen and valued. And in communication, that feeling is everything. People rarely remember your exact words, but they always remember how you made them feel. Abraham says that when you give someone your full attention, you're telling them, you matter. Your words matter. This moment matters. And that kind of presence transforms even ordinary interactions into meaningful ones. He writes, "Listening is not waiting to speak. It's the silent work of empathy." That line captures the essence of this chapter. Listening is more than hearing, it's a gift. A gift you give to others, and to yourself. Because when you listen fully, you stop reacting from fear and start responding from wisdom. You stop guessing and start knowing. So the next time you find yourself in conversation, whether in a meeting, an interview, or an unexpected moment, remember, thinking faster doesn't mean talking more. It means listening better. Take a breath. Let the other person's words settle. Don't plan your next line. Just be there. And when it's your turn to respond, your words will come, clear, calm, and perfectly aligned with the moment. Because the mind listens deeply, always knows what to say. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to stay calm, grounded, and fully aware, even in the most stressful high-pressure moments. Because presence isn't just a skill, it's the foundation of true confidence. Chapter 5, Being Present, How to Stay Focused and Calm. There's a moment, just before you speak, when the world seems to pause. You feel the weight of expectation, the pulse in your chest, the silence stretching across the room. Your mind races ahead, trying to predict what will happen, what you should say, how others will respond. And yet, that very rush, that desperate grasp for control, is what makes you lose it. Matt Abrahams teaches us that in those moments, the greatest power you can have is not in planning your words, but in being present. Presence, he says, is the antidote to panic. It's what anchors you when your thoughts spiral and your confidence falters. When you are truly present, grounded in the here and now, anxiety loses its grip. You are no longer haunted by the past or hijacked by the future. You're simply here, fully awake at this moment. Abrahams calls this the quiet confidence of awareness. It's not the kind of confidence that shouts or performs. It's the still, steady assurance that arises when your attention and your energy align. In that space, your words flow more naturally, your thoughts become clearer, and your emotions calm. But being present isn't easy. Our minds are restless creatures, always jumping between what's next and what's already gone. Abrahams explains that this mental time travel is one of the biggest barriers to effective spontaneous speaking. When you're busy worrying about what might go wrong, you can't fully connect with what's happening right now. He tells a story of a young executive he coached, someone brilliant on paper but paralyzed by self-doubt whenever he had to speak on the spot. The man confessed, "The moment I open my mouth, my mind starts racing ahead, worrying about what I'll say next." Abraham smiled and said, "You don't need to be 2 steps ahead. You only need to be here." Presence begins with awareness of your body, your breath, your surroundings. Abrahams introduces a simple but powerful exercise he calls breathe and see. Before speaking, take one slow breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice one thing in the room, a color, a shape, a sound. That act of observation pulls you out of your thoughts and into reality. Because here's the truth, anxiety lives in imagination. It feeds on what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. But the present moment is safe, stable, and real. You can't be overwhelmed by the future if you're fully focused on the now. Abrahams reminds us that presence also means letting go. Letting go of control. Letting go of the idea that you have to sound perfect. In communication, perfection is an illusion that destroys authenticity. When you let go of that pressure, you free yourself to be real, and people always connect more deeply with real than with perfect. He often says, your audience doesn't want a flawless performance. They want a genuine connection. And presence is what creates that connection. It's the invisible bridge between your inner state and the outer world. When you are calm and centered, others feel it. Your composure becomes contagious. Abrahams also points out that being present is not the same as being passive. It's not about zoning out or ignoring your nerves. It's about engaging fully with the moment, noticing what's happening inside and around you without resistance. When you notice your anxiety, you acknowledge it gently instead of fighting it. You can even name it, that's nervousness. The act of naming an emotion activates the logical part of the brain, reducing its intensity. He references a simple mindfulness principle, You can't control a wave, but you can learn to surf it. Your nervous energy isn't an enemy, it's a wave of life moving through you. The key is not to suppress it, but to ride it with awareness. Let's imagine a familiar scenario. You're in front of an audience, ready to speak. You feel your heartbeat quicken, your mind scatter. Instead of fighting it, you breathe. You plant your feet firmly, feel the air move in and out. You remind yourself, this moment is all that exists. And suddenly, the chaos inside quiets. The noise fades. Your words begin to flow, not from memory, but from presence. That's what Abrahams means by thinking faster by slowing down. When you are present, your brain processes information more efficiently. You catch subtle cues, body language, tone, reactions, that guide your responses. You adapt in real time. You stop reacting blindly and start responding intelligently. He also emphasizes the importance of micropresence, brief moments throughout the day where you pause, breathe, and reset your attention. Whether you're walking into a meeting or joining a conversation, take a single breath to center yourself. Over time, this becomes a habit, a silent ritual that grounds you before every interaction. Abrahams writes, "Presence is not a trait you're born with. It's a practice, a choice you make moment by moment." He explains that presence is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. And as it grows, your ability to stay calm and composed in unpredictable moments expands. You begin to realize that you don't need to control the conversation, you just need to be in it. Because the truth is, you can't be present and afraid at the same time. Fear lives in the future, presence lives in now. So the next time you feel the wave of pressure building, when your mind races, when your heart beats fast, remember this: the moment you're worried about hasn't happened yet. The only moment you can ever truly manage is this one. Breathe into it. Feel it. Speak from it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Because presence isn't just how you stay calm, it's how you stay real. It's the stillness inside the storm, the clarity beneath the chaos. When you master it, every conversation, every challenge, every moment becomes simpler, because you're no longer lost in what might happen. You're here, alive and aware, and that's where true confidence begins. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to use that calm, present energy to craft messages that are clear, concise, and powerful, even when you have only seconds to respond. Chapter 6, Messaging, Crafting Clear, Concise, Spontaneous Answers in a World that Moves Faster Than Thought. Clarity has become a rare and powerful skill. Most people, when put on the spot, say too much. Their words circle around the point, filling silence with clutter. But true communicators know that mastery is not in saying more, it's in saying just enough. In this chapter, Matt Abrahams reveals the art of messaging, how to craft clear, concise, and powerful answers in the moments that matter most. Abrahams begins with a simple truth: if you can't explain it simply, you don't truly understand it. The ability to deliver your message clearly, especially under pressure, is not about intelligence, it's about intentionality. It's the discipline of shaping your thoughts before they escape your mouth. When we're nervous, our instinct is to keep talking, hoping that somewhere between our words, we'll stumble upon meaning. But clarity doesn't come from volume, it comes from focus. The clearer you're thinking, the fewer words you need. Abrahams calls messaging the compass of communication. It helps you find direction when your mind feels scattered. Every spontaneous speaking moment, whether it's answering a question, giving feedback, or explaining an idea, should revolve around one core message, one central point that you want your audience to remember. He teaches a simple, powerful question to ask yourself before speaking: what is my takeaway? What's the one idea I want this person, or this room, to carry with them when I'm done? If you can identify that, everything else becomes easier. Your sentences begin to align, your words simplify, and your tone gains purpose. Abrahams tells a story about one of his students, a talented engineer who always lost her audience when explaining her projects. She was brilliant, but her messages were tangled in technical detail. One day, Abrahams asked her, "What's the one thing you want people to remember when you explain your work?" She paused and said, "That our design saves lives." He smiled and replied, "Then start there." From that day, her communication transformed. Her ideas suddenly felt human, relatable, powerful. The data hadn't changed, the message had. That's the heart of messaging, distillation. Abraham says, clarity is kindness. When you make your message simple, you're not dumbing it down, you're opening it up. You're making it easier for others to connect with, remember, and act upon. He recommends structuring spontaneous answers using message maps, simple frameworks that help you organize thoughts on the fly. Here's one of his favorites. Message. Start with your key takeaway. Support. Give 1 or 2 examples or reasons. Impact. End with why it matters. For example, the most important thing about our new initiative is that it improves collaboration. By centralizing information, teams can work faster and avoid duplication. This matters because it saves time and energy for everyone. Notice the rhythm. Clear, concise, complete. You don't overwhelm the listener, you guide them. That's the power of a well-crafted message. Abrahams emphasizes that clarity begins with empathy. To craft a good message, you must understand your audience, what they care about, what they already know, and what they need from you. He calls this audience-centered communication. Because in the end, speaking is not about expressing yourself, it's about being understood. He tells another story, about a CEO preparing to speak to her employees after a major company reorganization. Her initial draft was filled with corporate language and numbers. Abraham stopped her and asked, "What do your people need to feel when you speak?" She thought for a moment and said, "Safe." He nodded. "Then build your message around safety, not data." That shift changed everything. When she delivered her message, people didn't just hear her words, they felt them. They understood that she wasn't just giving information, she was giving reassurance. Abrahams explains that a great message lives at the intersection of clarity, brevity, and humanity. Clarity means your audience instantly understands your point. Brevity means you respect their time and attention. Humanity means your words connect to emotion, not just logic. When all three align, your message doesn't just inform, it transforms. But crafting clear, spontaneous answers also means mastering one subtle art, knowing when to stop. Abraham says, don't let your message drown in its own explanation. End with purpose. Once your key point lands, pause, smile, and let silence do the rest. Silence is not empty, it's powerful. It gives your words space to breathe and your audience time to absorb them. He offers a simple exercise called headlines only. Practice explaining complex ideas as if you were writing news headlines. Short, direct, essential. Our new product boosts efficiency by 40%. Our goal is to create faster, fairer communication. This change means better results for our clients. When you can state your point in one sentence, you've found your message. Abrahams writes, if you don't control your message controls you. And that's why clarity is not just a speaking skill, it's a thinking skill. The clearer your inner thought, the clearer your outer voice. So the next time someone turns to you unexpectedly, a question in a meeting, a challenge from a client, a moment when all eyes are on you, pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I want them to remember? Let that guide every word that follows. Speak less, mean more. Because communication isn't about talking, it's about transmitting truth. And when your truth is clear, even a few words can echo louder than 1,000 unclear ones. That's the beauty of concise, mindful speech. It leaves no confusion, only connection. In the next chapter, we'll explore the heart of communication, not words or structure, but the invisible thread that binds us all, connection. Chapter 7, Connection, Building Trust and Authenticity in the Moment. Communication is not just about words. It is about energy, presence, and the invisible bridges we build between ourselves and others. You can speak clearly, structure your thoughts perfectly, and deliver concise messages, yet if your audience doesn't trust you, your message evaporates into noise. Matt Abrahams reminds us that in every spontaneous conversation, connection is the secret ingredient that transforms mere words into influence, understanding, and resonance. Connection begins with authenticity. Too often, when we are put on the spot, our instinct is to perform. We try to impress, to sound knowledgeable, to avoid mistakes. But this performance, even if polished, creates distance. People instinctively sense it. They don't just listen to what you say, they feel your energy, your intention, your truth. And when your words align with your authentic self, they carry weight. When they don't, they fall flat. Abrahams writes, "Trust is invisible, yet it determines whether your words land or vanish." The way to earn that trust in real time is simple. Be present, be genuine, and care about the other person's perspective. Every spontaneous exchange is an opportunity to strengthen that bond. The challenge is that connection can't be faked. It must emerge naturally, rooted in curiosity and empathy. He emphasizes 3 pillars of connection in spontaneous speaking: empathy, vulnerability, and responsiveness. Empathy is listening with intent, not just to respond, but to understand. When you truly hear someone, you validate their experience. You communicate without words that they matter. And that validation opens hearts and minds, allowing your message to travel further. Vulnerability is showing humanity. It's the courage to let your audience see that you are real, fallible, and present in the moment. A perfectly polished answer may impress temporarily, but a small admission, a pause, a smile, a confession of uncertainty, creates a lasting bond. Abrahams notes that people don't just trust competence, they trust character. And character is revealed through vulnerability. Responsiveness is the art of adapting in real time. Connection is not static, it is dynamic. You adjust your tone, your words, and your energy based on the person in front of you. The most compelling communicators read the room, intuitively sensing reactions and responding in kind, like a dancer moving with rhythm, not rigidly with steps. Imagine a manager, Mira, giving feedback spontaneously to her team. Instead of launching into a monologue about performance metrics, she pauses, looks each person in the eye, and begins, "I know this week has been challenging. I see the effort each of you is putting in." She acknowledges struggles, empathizes with their experience, and then shares guidance. The room shifts. Tension eases. Engagement rises. That is the power of connection in action. Words alone didn't create it. Presence, authenticity, and empathy did. Abrahams highlights that connection is also about alignment. When your verbal and nonverbal signals match, trust blossoms. If your tone contradicts your words, smiling while giving critical feedback, for example, your audience detects the mismatch instantly. Connection requires congruence, body, voice, and message moving in harmony. He also introduces a subtle but powerful idea: micro-connections. Every spontaneous interaction is a series of tiny opportunities: a nod, a brief eye contact, a smile, a responsive gesture. These small acts of attention and care accumulate, forming a web of trust that supports even the most challenging conversations. Connection is rarely built in grand speeches alone. It is forged moment by moment. Abrahams writes that connection is contagious. When you engage authentically, you invite reciprocity. The listener relaxes, mirrors your energy, and begins to trust your perspective. Suddenly, a conversation that could have been tense or awkward becomes a shared journey of understanding. And connection is not just external, it also requires self-connection. You cannot transmit authenticity if you are disconnected from your own thoughts and values. Before speaking, ground yourself in your principles, your intentions, and your awareness. When you know who you are and what you stand for, spontaneous speaking becomes an extension of your identity rather than a performance to be evaluated. He shares a practical exercise. Before responding in a spontaneous moment, pause for a heartbeat. Ask internally, what do I care about here? What matters most? That brief alignment of mind and heart instantly increases authenticity, guiding words that resonate rather than fall flat. Finally, Abrahams reminds us that connection transcends words. People remember how they felt, seen, understood, and respected. Words are vessels. Connection is the current that carries them. Even if your phrasing is imperfect, connection ensures your message lands with impact. So the next time you find yourself speaking spontaneously, Don't focus solely on what to say. Focus on who you are being: present, attentive, genuine, and empathetic. Build trust with your energy as much as with your words. Because the most memorable communicators aren't just heard, they are felt. Connection is the heart of spontaneous speaking. It transforms clarity into influence, words into meaning, and presence into trust. Mastering it requires courage, practice, and attention, but once cultivated, it becomes your superpower in every conversation. In the next chapter, we'll explore how deliberate practice and preparation can make spontaneity effortless, turning every moment into an opportunity to communicate with clarity, confidence, and connection. Chapter 8. Practice. Preparing to be spontaneous. Even the most effortless conversations are built on invisible scaffolding. Matt Abrahams reminds us that spontaneity is not the absence of preparation, it is the mastery of it. The paradox is subtle but profound. The more deliberately we practice, the more naturally we respond. Spontaneous speaking is like jazz, improvisation that is anchored in rhythm, knowledge, and intuition. The performer who never rehearses cannot flow. The one who has practiced countless scales and riffs can transform a blank moment into music. Practice in communication, therefore, is not about memorizing lines or scripting responses. It is about creating mental flexibility, sharpening instincts, and building the confidence to trust yourself in the moment. Abrahams emphasizes the power of mental rehearsal, a quiet, reflective practice where you imagine scenarios, anticipate questions, and envision multiple ways of responding. It is less about predicting the future and more about expanding your mental map, preparing your mind to navigate uncertainty with grace. In this rehearsal, you might visualize a challenging meeting, a sudden question from a colleague, or an unexpected interruption in a presentation. You imagine yourself pausing, taking a breath, connecting to your core intention, and responding with clarity. Each time you run through these scenarios mentally, you strengthen the neurological pathways that make real-time adaptability possible. But practice does not end with mental rehearsal. It extends into micro-experiments in everyday life, small, low-stakes interactions where you consciously test your spontaneity. Abraham suggests asking a colleague a thought-provoking question, telling a brief story in a team meeting, or responding impromptu to a comment during casual conversation. Each micro-practice session allows you to refine your timing, tone, and structure, while also building your comfort with unpredictability. Over time, your confidence grows not because you can predict everything, but because you know you can handle whatever arises. Equally important is reflective practice. After a conversation or presentation, pause and review, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What felt natural? What caused hesitation? What cues did you miss? Abraham stresses that reflection turns ordinary experience into a laboratory for improvement. Like a musician listening to a recorded performance, you begin to notice the subtle inflections, pauses, and choices that make communication resonate. Through repeated cycles of rehearsal, micropractice, and reflection, you cultivate the three pillars of prepared spontaneity: presence, flexibility, and confidence. Presence allows you to fully inhabit the moment, attune to your audience, your words, and your own intentions. Flexibility enables you to adapt without losing coherence, to pivot gracefully when circumstances change. Confidence gives you the courage to speak from your authentic self, knowing that even in uncertainty, you can respond effectively. Abrahams also introduces the concept of scripts with open spaces. These are mental outlines, frameworks rather than rigid speeches, that guide you while leaving room for improvisation. For example, you might outline 3 key points for a meeting but remain open to detours, questions, and spontaneous connections. The structure provides security. The openness allows agility. Practice also sharpens your emotional resilience. Spontaneous speaking often triggers anxiety, a surge of self-consciousness, or the fear of judgment. By repeatedly exposing yourself to low-stakes, improvisational situations, you desensitize yourself to these reactions, learning to pause, breathe, and respond calmly. In essence, preparation does not eliminate the unknown. It teaches you to move through it with skill and grace. Finally, Abrahams emphasizes that practice is cumulative and ongoing. There is no single moment when you are fully prepared to be spontaneous. Every interaction, every conversation, Every pause is an opportunity to refine your instincts, expand your repertoire, and deepen your self-awareness. Over time, what once felt risky becomes intuitive. Your mind becomes a reservoir of patterns, stories, and connections ready to surface at the right moment. Spontaneity, then, is not magic. It is the quiet result of intentional work, repeated practice, and reflective growth. The more you practice, the more effortless it appears. The improvisation that dazzles others is anchored in preparation that only you see. In this way, every thoughtful rehearsal, every conscious experiment, and every reflective pause builds the muscle memory of confident, responsive, and authentic communication. By practicing intentionally, you do not merely prepare for the unexpected. You cultivate the ability to transform it into opportunity, turning each moment of uncertainty into a chance to connect, influence, and be remembered. In the rhythm of practice, spontaneity becomes not a gamble but a skill, a dance between preparation and improvisation, where the trained mind and the present moment meet in harmony. Chapter 9. Framing, guiding conversations toward clarity and impact. Communication is more than words. It is a lens through which reality is perceived, a frame that shapes understanding before a single thought is fully expressed. Matt Abrahams introduces the subtle transformative concept of framing, the conscious act of guiding how a conversation is understood, experienced, and remembered. Every interaction carries an invisible context, an unseen architecture of assumptions, emotions, and expectations. Without deliberate framing, a conversation can drift, misunderstandings can arise, and even the most important points may vanish into ambiguity. Framing is not manipulation, it is clarity in motion. It begins with intention. Before speaking, pause and ask yourself, what do I want the listener to understand, feel, or do? How can I structure the conversation so that my message lands with resonance rather than resistance? By consciously shaping the context, you create a path for meaning, making it easier for others to follow, engage, and respond. One of the most powerful tools in framing is the opening, the moment where attention is captured and direction is subtly established. Abrahams emphasizes that beginnings matter more than we often realize. A clear, confident opening can orient listeners, set expectations, and prime the brain to receive information in a particular way. Whether in a meeting, a casual conversation, or a high-stakes presentation, the first few sentences act as a frame that colors everything that follows. Framing continues in the choice of language and structure. Words are not neutral. They carry connotations, evoke imagery, and shape emotional response. Abrahams illustrates how a single word can pivot a conversation, describing a challenge as a problem versus an opportunity, or positioning feedback as guidance rather than critique. Similarly, the structure of information, what comes first, what is emphasized, what is repeated, guides the listener's perception and comprehension. Stories, metaphors, and analogies are framing devices that translate abstract ideas into relatable experiences. They create mental scaffolding, allowing complex concepts to be understood effortlessly. A well-chosen story not only conveys information but also frames it in a way that sticks in memory, evokes emotion, and encourages action. Equally important is the ability to reframe in the midst of conversation. Misunderstandings, resistance, or confusion often arise not from the content itself, but from the frame through which it is viewed. Abrahams highlights the power of gently shifting perspectives, reframing attention as curiosity, a setback as a learning moment, or a disagreement as a collaborative opportunity. This adaptive skill turns potential obstacles into openings for connection and clarity. Framing also involves subtle orchestration of attention. Abrahams notes that humans naturally filter information, focusing on what seems most relevant or urgent. By framing, you guide attention to key points, ensuring that critical ideas are noticed, remembered, and acted upon. Visual cues, tone of voice, emphasis, and repetition are all instruments in this orchestration, helping to align perception with intention. Perhaps the most profound aspect of framing is its ethical dimension. Framing is not about controlling thought but about illuminating possibilities, highlighting what matters, and reducing confusion. It is a responsibility, a way of honoring the listener's capacity to understand while guiding the conversation toward constructive outcomes. Through deliberate framing, you transform dialogue into influence without coercion, clarity without oversimplification, and connection without manipulation. Abrahams emphasizes that mastery of framing requires both awareness and practice. Observe how conversations unfold, noting where frames succeed or falter. Experiment with openings, metaphors, and emphasis, then reflect on the impact. Over time, framing becomes intuitive, the ability to guide understanding while remaining flexible, responsive, and authentic. In this skill lies the essence of clarity and impact, the ability to ensure that ideas are not only heard but internalized, that intentions are not only expressed but comprehended, and that every interaction becomes a carefully guided journey of meaning. Framing, then, is the art of aligning thought, expression, and perception, shaping the lens through which others see, understand, and act. When practiced with intention and integrity, it transforms conversations from mere exchanges of words into experiences of insight, connection, and influence, leaving a lasting imprint long after the moment has passed. It is both compass and canvas, guiding the direction of dialogue while painting it with clarity, resonance, and impact. In mastering framing, you discover that every conversation can be a stage where ideas shine, where understanding flourishes, and where influence is not demanded but naturally earned. Chapter 10. Adapting, responding in the moment without losing control. In every conversation, there exists an invisible dance between intention and reality, a dynamic tension between what we plan to say and how the moment unfolds. Matt Abrahams calls this the essence of adapting, the skill of responding in real time without losing composure, clarity, or control. Life rarely presents itself in perfectly scripted exchanges. Questions arrive unexpectedly, challenges emerge without warning, and emotions flare unpredictably. In these moments, the strength of your communication is measured not by what you had rehearsed, but by how you navigate the uncharted terrain of the present. Adapting begins with presence. To respond effectively, you must first be fully attuned to the words, tone, and body language of those around you, and to the subtle currents of energy in the room. Presence is a silent anchor, grounding thought amidst uncertainty, and giving you the mental clarity to choose a response rather than react impulsively. Abrahams emphasizes the importance of embracing flexibility as a mindset. Rigidity in thought or language can turn unexpected questions into traps, miscommunication into conflict, and dialogue into deadlock. By cultivating a mindset that is curious rather than defensive, you open the door to possibilities. Adaptation is not compromise, it is discernment, the ability to recognize what matters in the moment, prioritize clarity over perfection, and pivot gracefully without sacrificing the essence of your message. One of the most striking lessons in adapting is the power of listening actively while simultaneously planning. It is a delicate balance. You must absorb new information, detect emotional cues, and gauge understanding, all while preparing a coherent, meaningful response. This requires mental agility, a fluidity of thought that allows you to adjust structure, tone, and emphasis in real time. Abrahams introduces techniques to anchor this skill. Pausing before responding, reframing unexpected questions as opportunities, and summarizing or reflecting before answering are all ways to buy critical milliseconds that make adaptation possible. These small, deliberate pauses create space for thought, prevent knee-jerk reactions, and allow your response to be measured, precise, and impactful. Emotion management is inseparable from adaptation. In tense or high-stakes moments, the body instinctively reacts, heart races, voice tightens, focus narrows. Abrahams reminds us that mastery is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to channel it constructively. By recognizing the physiological signals of stress and tension, you can redirect energy toward clarity, curiosity, and composure. Humor, empathy, and reframing also become tools of adaptation, diffusing tension, building connection, and allowing conversations to flow even under pressure. Another dimension of adapting is strategic improvisation, the capacity to invent solutions, analogies, or explanations in the moment that resonate with the listener. This is not random spontaneity, it is creativity anchored in preparation. Abrahams underscores that the more you understand your subject, your audience, and your own patterns of thought, the more effectively you can improvise. Knowledge and preparation become the safety net from which confident adaptation springs. The subtle art of adapting lies in the balance between control and surrender. You cannot predict every turn of a conversation, yet you can control your mindset, your presence, and the principles guiding your response. By embracing uncertainty as a natural part of dialogue, you transform unpredictability from a threat into a stage for skill, insight, and connection. Adaptation is also reflective. After a conversation, reviewing how you responded, what choices worked, and what could have been handled differently reinforces growth. Abrahams emphasizes that adaptation is a muscle, strengthened through conscious practice, reflection, and incremental challenges. Over time, moments that once felt overwhelming become arenas for confident engagement. Every question, interruption, or unexpected comment becomes an opportunity to exercise composure, clarity, and impact. Ultimately, adapting is not about perfection in response, but about maintaining presence, clarity, and purpose in the fluidity of conversation. It is the difference between reacting and engaging, between being swept along by circumstance and steering the dialogue with intention. Through mastering adaptation, communication becomes less about rehearsed lines and more about authentic responsiveness, less about avoiding mistakes and more about navigating the moment with grace, intelligence, and empathy. It is a dynamic living skill, one that allows you to meet uncertainty not with fear but with curiosity, not with rigidity but with creativity, and not with retreat but with confident, mindful action. To adapt is to honor both the spontaneity of life and the integrity of your voice, transforming every conversation into a space where presence, clarity, and connection converge, and where influence is earned naturally through the artful mastery of the moment. Conclusion: mastering the moment, from spontaneity to connection. As we reach the end of this journey, it becomes clear that effective communication is less about perfect words and more about the harmony between thought, presence, and adaptability. From the first spark of awareness to the final moments of connection, each chapter has explored a different facet of engaging with the world, from managing nerves and listening deeply, to crafting clear messages, practicing, framing conversations, adapting in real time, and ultimately connecting with others. The through line is simple yet profound. Communication is an art that thrives in the moment, fueled by preparation but alive in spontaneity. Matt Abraham's insights remind us that mastery does not come from rigid scripts or rehearsed lines, but from cultivating presence, curiosity, and courage. To communicate effectively is to enter a delicate dance, to anticipate without overplanning, to respond without rigidity, and to guide conversations toward understanding without forcing them. Every pause, every reflective breath, every deliberate choice of words is a step toward clarity and influence. The power of these principles extends beyond public speaking or professional settings. They shape relationships, leadership, and personal growth. By listening deeply, we honor the perspectives of others. By framing thoughtfully, we guide understanding. By adapting gracefully, we transform uncertainty into opportunity. Every conversation becomes a chance to strengthen connection, to inspire trust, and to leave an impact that resonates long after the words have faded. Ultimately, mastering communication is about mastering ourselves. It is about balancing preparation with flexibility, confidence with humility, and strategy with empathy. It is about embracing the unpredictability of human interaction as a canvas for creativity and authenticity. As you carry these lessons forward, remember that each dialogue is both a reflection and a test of your presence, your awareness, and your courage. The more you practice, adapt, and connect, the more fluent you become in the language of influence and understanding. This book is not an endpoint but an invitation to step into every conversation with intention, clarity, and openness. To speak with confidence, to listen with empathy, and to adapt with grace. To transform ordinary exchanges into meaningful encounters, and to discover that the art of communication is, above all, the art of connecting, with others, with ideas, and with ourselves. In mastering these moments, we do more than convey words. We shape understanding, inspire action, and leave a mark on the world that only authentic, mindful communication can create.